In this video, we're going to explore what the square root of x squared is. Right? So this is the question we're trying to answer. What is the square root of x squared? In other words, we're trying to answer what is this equal to, right? The square root of x squared. Okay? And the most common answer is that the square root of x squared is equal to x. Right? And the reason why we kind of think that is because squaring something and taking the square root, it seems like those are just inverses of each other, right? If you square something and then you take the square root, it kind of sounds like that makes sense to get back to the original number. Right? So let's test this out. Right? Let's test a couple cases. All right, let's test and see if this is true if, let's say, x is equal to 3. Okay, so we have the square root of x squared equal to x, and let's see if this is true. So we want to take the square root of 3 squared and see if that's equal to 3. Well, 3 squared is 9, so we've got on the left the square root of 9 equals 3. Square root of 9 is 3. Is 3 equals 3? Yeah, that's true. Right? So it seems like it makes sense that the square root of x squared is equal to x. Right, well, let's test another case. Right, let's test, how about x equal to 4? Right, let's see if this works. The square root of x squared equals x. So we've got the square root of 4 squared. Does that equal 4? Well, 4 squared is 16. So square root of 16 equals 4. Yeah, that's true. We get 4 equals 4. Right? So it seems like this always works. Right? In fact, it even works if you try a number like 0. So the square root of x squared is equal to x. Let's see if this works. Square root of 0 squared, is that equal to 0? Well, 0 squared is 0, and the square root of 0 is equal to 0. So 0 equals 0, that's true. So it seems like this always works. But actually, it doesn't always work. Okay. This does not work if we choose a negative value for x. Let's test x equals negative 4. Right? And now previously we showed that it works for positive 4. Let's see if it works for negative 4. Okay? So let's see, square root of x squared, let's see if that is equal to x when x is equal to negative 4. So square root of negative 4 squared, is that equal to negative 4? Well, on the left-hand side, negative 4 squared is 16. So we get the square root of 16 equals negative 4. Right? And then here we have got the square root of 16. The principal root, the principal square root of 16 is 4. 4 equals negative 4. That's false. Alright? So this right here is actually not true. Right? The square root of x squared is not equal to x always. Right? That's only true if we're dealing with numbers that are equal to 0 or if they're positive. Right? It actually does not work for negative numbers. So that brings us back to this question. What is the square root of x squared? What is this, the square root of x squared? Right? We know it's not equal to x all the time. Right? And what we want is we want a statement that is true all the time. Right? And it turns out that the way to make this statement true all the time is to realize this. The square root of x squared is not equal to x, it's equal to the absolute value of x. And this statement works all the time. Right? Let's test a couple of points, a couple of values. Let me test, see what happens if x is equal to a positive number, like 6. Okay? So let's test the square root of x squared. Is that equal to the absolute value of x? Okay? So square root of 6 squared, is that equal to the absolute value of 6? Well, 6 squared is 36, so we have the square root of 36. The absolute value of 6 is 6, so we get the square root of 36 equals 6, and this is true. 6 equals 6. That's true. Right? This is always going to work for positive values. Okay? Right, is this going to work for 0? Let's test. Let's test x equals 0. Okay? So square root of x squared is equal to absolute value of x. Is this true when x is equal to 0? Okay, so square root of 0 squared, is that equal to the absolute value of 0? And we end up with the square root of 0. equals absolute value of 0 is 0. Square root of 0 is 0. 0 equals 0, that's true. So this works when x is a positive number. It works if x is equal to 0. And it's also gonna work, or let's test if it works if x is a negative. How about let's try x equals negative 6. So we've got the square root of x squared, and we're trying to see, is that equal to the absolute value of x? So square root of the quantity negative 6 squared, is that equal to the absolute value of negative 6? Right? Well, negative 6 squared is 36, so we've got the square root of 36, and on the right-hand side, the absolute value of negative 6 is 6. On the left-hand side, square root of 36 is 6, equals 6. That's true. Okay, so right here, this is what you need to know. The square root of x squared is not equal to x. The square root of x squared is equal to the absolute value of x. This statement here will be true always. So make sure you know this. The square root of x squared is equal to the absolute value of x.